I wound up in hospital for 3 months. My prognosis was you're not going to leave this space alive, so begin to take care of your affairs. My lungs shut down, my heart stopped. Wound up in a trauma room in a hospital, of course, and they're trying to revive me. And whilst they're trying to revive me, I have what is most people call a near-death experience. I wound up in this realm that was just, I was surrounded by color. But what was significant about the color was that it had the same life force that I have. It was creating this incredible sense of love and peace and calm and acceptance. It accepted me. It got to the point where the color was kind of drawing me towards it, or the color was moving towards me. I don't know which. But ultimately I became the color. And I finally came back, and when I came back, I noticed that the CPR people were just struggling to keep me alive. And you start thinking about all your loved ones and things like that. Whilst in the hospital, because I was in there for 3 months, was every time I heard that cold blue, I would escape to that realm where I saw the colors. And that's where I found peace. I found peace and calm. And the reason I'm here is because those colors, in my opinion, help to heal me. The memory of the colors and what I saw was so intense, and it just kept coming up in my thoughts all the time. I couldn't really get away from it. I decided that I needed to find a way to bring it to life. If that was what helped me get out, maybe we could create something that could help others. And not only in the hospital environment, but just to reduce anxiety and stress. I mean, the wonderful moments are great. We don't have to escape from those, but when things get a little tough or things are a little hard and we're just running, we need to take a breath. If I was healed with the memory of color, I'm just wondering if the actual frequency of color has that capability.
You'll learn more about it if you check into Consciousness Cafe's meetup group. If you haven't joined that meetup group, I encourage you to do so. Um, Jose, I'm going to give you the mic. There's so much interest to share with everybody. So why don't you take it over from here?
Hi everyone, good morning, and thank you all for being here. So uh, I think we're going to start with a 2-minute sizzle reel that's going to kind of give you a little introduction into a little bit about me and my focus on color and the capacity for color to heal frequency. So Michael, if you could go ahead and run that real quick. I wound up in hospital for 3 months. My prognosis was you're not going to leave this space alive, so begin to take care of your affairs. My lungs shut down, my heart stopped. Wound up in a trauma room in a hospital, of course, and they're trying to revive me. And whilst they're trying to revive me, I have what is most people call a near-death experience. I wound up in this realm that was just, I was surrounded by color. But what was significant about the color was that it had the same life force that I have. It was creating this incredible sense of love and peace and calm and acceptance. it accepted me. It got to the point where the color was kind of drawing me towards it, or the color was moving towards me. I don't know which. But ultimately, I became the color. And I finally came back, and when I came back, I noticed that the CPR people were just struggling to keep me alive. And you start thinking about all your loved ones and things like that. Whilst in the hospital, because I was in there for 3 months, was every time I heard that cold blue, I would escape to that realm where I saw the colors. And that's where I found peace. I found peace and calm. And the reason I'm here is because those colors, in my opinion, helped to heal me. The memory of the colors and what I saw was so intense, and it just kept coming up in my thoughts all the time. I couldn't really get away from it. I decided that I needed to find a way to bring it to life. If that was what helped me get out, maybe we could create something that could help others. And not only in the hospital environment, but just to reduce anxiety and stress. I mean, the wonderful moments are great. We don't have to escape from those, but when things get a little tough or things are a little hard and we're just running, we need to take a breath. If I was healed with the memory of color, I'm just wondering if the actual frequency of color has that capability. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and start, and then we're going to do a call to our angels and our family members that we have lost that are crossed on to the other side. And whatever it is that you believe that can come in and participate in this event with us. So when that final moment was upon me, and I was finally released from the hold time had on me, it was then, and only then, that time was compressed into a state of non-existence. And in that final heartbeat, that final breath, and that final gasp, I was fused into a state of eternity. And it's there too, where what was relevant to this life was distilled, and purified until I finally became. And it was at this door, in this space, and this single moment of eternity that I rekindled the relationship that I had with the I that I am, and I was reunited with the thread of my being outside of me, and I simply became. And so my transformation was complete. And yes, my name is Jose Hernandez, and I'm going to share a story with you today. But where do you begin to tell a story when a story has no beginning or no end? A story is eternal. So in that case, I guess we'll meet the story here. And before I start telling that story, I'd like everybody to close their eyes for 1 second. Take a nice deep breath. Let it go. Nice deep breath. Let it go. And I'd like to invite all the spirit keepers and the angels, all those loved ones that are still with us and those that have moved on, to join us in this event and to participate and witness what it is that we're doing today, and pray that they with them the energy to help us all heal in whatever way it is that we need to heal. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start my story, and open your eyes now. So my story starts on a cloudy day in South Florida. I was running some electrical lines, some poles in Miami, and I was up on a bucket truck, and it was Wednesday evening, right before Thanksgiving, and so we were anticipating that 4-day weekend, and we were trying to rush. So I was up on a bucket truck, and we decided that instead of coming up and down and taking all that time, we would just move from one point to the other. And the driver was trying to avoid electrocuting me. So he was kind of looking up a little more than he was looking in front, and he bumped into a pole, a tree. And when he hit the tree, I hit the bucket and I broke all my ribs on the right side. Wound up going to the emergency room, and they taped me up. They said I had some broken ribs, and not a whole lot they could do about it. So they gave me some pain meds. I took the first pain pill. They gave it to me right there. By the time I got home, I was really struggling to breathe. And I was thinking that wasn't normal. So I called the hospital. I said, you know what? I'm really struggling to breathe. And they said, you know what? That's normal. You're all taped up. You're not going to be able to take a deep breath, and you're not going to be able to do this or that. So I said, okay. So I continued to take this medication, and my condition kept getting worse and worse and worse, and I could barely breathe. And I went from having to not be able to sleep in bed. I had to sleep in a sofa sitting up. And just about Christmas now, they had seen me a couple of times. They were trying to figure out what was wrong, but they really couldn't. And it was a crazy time because it was that 2000. We were going to have this crazy thing happen on 2000. They were worried about computer systems and everything was going to crash. And anyway, I got past that. And it was on January 5th that I could barely breathe. And I had my wife and my son take me to the hospital. And they admitted me. And I'm sitting in the emergency room waiting for a room actually to open up. And the nurse comes in and she says, if you need help, just push this button. And I guess this is really when I kind of fall into that phase where, I couldn't breathe. I'm a guy. I grew up in the South Bronx. I'm supposed to be tough. I'm supposed to be able to handle all these things without fear. And the last thing in your mind that this is critical. You really don't think that you're in a life and death situation. Well, I didn't. And so I was really struggling to breathe, but I said, no, I could manage this. I'm going to be okay. It's going to be all right. And I waited about 45 minutes. And during that time, I would look at that button that the nurse had there by the bed, and I kept thinking about hitting it, but I just said, nah, I'm going to make it past this. Anyway, it finally came to that point where I had to hit that button. When I hit that button, the nurse comes in, she opens the door of the room, and she just looked at me. And there's a cold blue button on the wall right by the door, and she hits that. And the next thing I know, the room is getting filled with people. I'm not sure what's going on in my mind at that time because I don't know what happens to my mind, but I wasn't aware that I was in any danger, or I didn't feel like I was. I know I couldn't breathe. Anyway, they laid me down and they started to strip me down. And the first sensation that I had was shame. I felt so ashamed that I couldn't hang on to that sheet that was covering me, and I couldn't stop them from stripping me down. And that was a very strong feeling, very strong emotion. The next thing I know, I struggling to breathe. I'm beginning to think, wait a minute, this might be serious. Maybe this is something that's a little more than I anticipated. And I started thinking about my children and my family. And I get this tremendous knot in my chest, right where my heart is. And
That was the strongest emotion that I've ever had about potentially losing the ability to see my family again. So I became filled with fear at that time. That, wow, maybe if this is really happening, if this is serious, I may not be able to see my family again. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. There's no way they're going to be able to call them and they're going to be able to get here in time to see me. So I decided that, in life, I had chosen to be an atheist because my father was half First Nation and his belief of creator was very different than my mother, who was French, who had a very Catholic-based concept of God. So God was in a building to her, in a church. To my father, I look out the window, God is everywhere. So I decided that I would take a different path. And because I thought I was more science-minded, I kind of went in that path of maybe God is just something that is there to help us to kind of manage through things when we get fearful and stuff. And I also sadly had a mindset that the church was a very good business and it was based on fear. So if I did this, it was good. If I didn't do that, then I would go to hell and all these crazy things. And in my mind, I thought that if there was a God, I don't think that would be the way. But anyway, I decided to ask God for help. I said, God, if you're real, this might be a good time for you to kind of intercede here on my behalf and get me out of this mess that I'm in. But then, of course, I not only said that, I said, and if you do that, then I promise I will be a changed man. I will be better. I'll be a lot more aware of what's going on. I'll be more focused on what other people feel. I'll be less about me and more about them. So what happened was, incredibly enough, and this is all happening within a few minutes. It felt like minutes, hours had passed, and nothing's happening. So what I said was, God, I knew you weren't real. I knew this was just a bunch of BS anyway. So what am I doing reaching out to you, trying to call to something that I always believed wasn't real? What happened after that was that my heart started to become irregular because it's not getting any oxygen. And it starts to sounds like a horse galloping. It's bam, 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 bam. It's really hard, really beating hard in my chest, and it's very erratic. And I could feel that. I remember I looked to my right and I had a bunch of IVs on. And then the sound of the IV at that point sounded like rain hitting a tin roof. Splash, splash, splash. And I remember looking at the walls and I could see the grain in the wallpaper. And in my mind, I'm saying, gosh, what's happening? This is incredible. Yet, my body is still struggling to stay alive. And I look to the door finally, and I just see it framed in light, and it's kind of like backlit. It's very bright, and I see a shadow by that door. And the fear and terror that is beginning to take hold because I don't have a faith. I don't believe in afterlife. I don't believe in any of these things. Was what's going to happen to me? If I die now, what's going to happen to me? Where am I going to go? And my mind, because I was worked a lot with electricity, was that I was going to be turned off like a light bulb. So somebody was going to hit a switch and I'd be shut off, and that was the end of it. I'd disappear. And that made the experience even more fearful because I could not imagine an ending. And I started to begin to realize that maybe this was a little more than I anticipated, and that I was helpless to change the chain of events that were taking place. I couldn't stop this from happening. I started thinking about my family again, and then I started thinking about my father. And I started thinking about my father because I was so fearful. I wanted somebody to hold my hand. I couldn't speak, so I couldn't ask for that anyway, but I started thinking about my dad, and I'm saying he's gonna turn in his grave if I show fear, if I show that I'm afraid, if I show anything. So I actually stiffened. I'll never forget my body tensed. Like I'm not gonna show any fear. I can't allow myself to do that. I can't show weakness. And a few seconds later, I start thinking there's nothing I could do about this again. And so maybe it's okay to surrender, to give in, to accept this, and that there was no shame in doing that. The minute that thought went in my head, a shadow that was by the door begins to move past everyone, just moves right around them, almost as if it's aware that they're there. And it reaches out and it touches my toes. And the minute I am touched, this wave goes right through me, and I feel this tremendous sense of love and peace. And suddenly my fear is gone. And incredibly enough, I could breathe again. And I feel this wind coming, blowing in this room. And I got this crazy long hair, and in my mind, I'm visualizing my hair just blowing in the wind. And I feel like something is lifting me and lifting me. And the next thing I know, I'm standing in the corner of the room watching CPR team trying to save my life. Now, I look at myself and I see this woman doctor pumping my chest, pumping my chest, pumping my chest, and anxiety in her face. Anyway, I look at myself and I'm thinking, how could I be seeing myself there? How could I be seeing if my eyes are over there? How could I be thinking if my brain is over there? How could this be happening? And I feel this presence next to me. So I asked this question, and this became the most important question I've ever asked. I said, that's me and I'm dead. But if that's me, then who am I? And from that moment, everything began to kind of really change. So I hear this voice. I don't see anything. I just feel something there. And it says to me, imagine that you're a car, and that car has 5 million miles on it. And it's broken beyond repair now, so you're going to have to say goodbye. And I kind of understood that, easy for me to understand. We have a car, it breaks down to the point where we can't fix it anymore. It doesn't make sense to fix it anymore. And we let it go. So she's asking me to let go. And I looked at my body. And for the first time in my life, I looked at my body and I felt so much love for who I'd been. And I realized that everything I thought about myself that was negative, how I looked in the mirror, how I worried about how I looked, and all these things that I was worried about were so irrelevant. That vessel had been the most amazing vessel for me. It was perfect for me. Though in life, I was so critical of who I was and how I looked and all these things. So I start looking at my body and I begin to have an experience of memories. And the memories are not like the big moments that we think about in life that are relevant and important. They were these everyday, simple things that we all see a million times a day. So it was a smile. It was me holding my little brother's hand. It was a little kiss, a hug, some things like that. Things that I realized that while I was living, I never made important. You know, important was making money, moving ahead, this rat race type of competitive mindset that we have in New York City. That was what was important while I was alive. Now I'm dead, and all these beautiful moments, looking at my children when they were little and how they look at you with love. They don't know it, but they're just rolling with it. And I could never see it. And I'm looking at my body with so much gratitude and so much love and understanding how great my life had actually been. And I always thought it had been such a brutal and hard life. So I look at my body and I finally say goodbye. And I walk off being. And she's kind of walking me in a direction. I see this big hole, like a black hole in the ground in front of me. And I keep walking and I fall into this black hole. And as I fall into this thing, I feel like I'm being ripped apart. And I come out on the bottom, the other side. And she says, no, we got to keep going. So I keep going and I fall into this other black hole. And I'm feeling the same thing, like I'm being ripped apart. Finally hit bottom. And then I start walking. And in front of me, imagine being inside a bowl, if you can. You're right in the center, and all around us this world of color. And all these amazing colors, and they're changing, they're moving, they're alive. And I am so ecstatic. And I'm looking at all this color, and I hear it speaking, but there's so many voices, I can't identify any one voice. So it sounds like chatter, billion voices. And I feel so amazing. And as I move towards this color, now I don't know if I'm moving towards it or if the color is coming towards me. I feel this incredible connectivity with it. So when I actually touch this color, I became the color. And I felt this incredible sensation, all these different energies move through me. And I keep moving through these colors and I finally come out on the other side. When I come out on the other side, I see this amazing, amazing vista. Now I'm from New York City and I was living in Florida, but what I saw were these amazing mountains and there was snow up on the top and these beautiful woods and these amazing forests right in front of me. And the clouds made these beautiful dark shadows on the mountainside. And I could see these herds of animals running everywhere. It was amazing. And I thought about my children again. And I said, what's going to happen to my children? And I heard that voice say, don't worry, you can see them from here. And that brought a tremendous amount of peace to my heart. And then I started moving. And I was actually flying. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm flying. And the voice said, that's normal here. And at that point, I became. And what I mean was that by that is that if I came near a tree, I became that tree. I could feel that tree nurturing itself, feeding itself from the ground. It was like an amazing, amazing feeling. I could feel the leaves being touched by the wind and almost breathing. I became a rock. I became the sky. I became the air. I was like, we talk about oneness, and I was experiencing a sense of oneness that I could never even, it's hard for me to explain to you even words, but I was becoming all these things that I thought that we have here that I see every day and then make them relevant to my life. If I saw a bird, I could become that bird. I could see through their eyes. I was like, awed would be the best word I could come to describing it. And that sense of peace and love. And that breeze was still moving towards me. And in my mind, I'm thinking that's what's giving me this buoyancy. That's what's allowing me to fly. Anyway, I keep going and I finally get to the top of the mountain and I see that white snow and I said, wow, that's so beautiful. And I could see over across the mountain and I see this crescent cove and a beach and the ocean is so beautiful. And in the horizon, I could see the sun. But I wasn't seeing the sun like we see it here when it's setting and things like that. What I saw was a sun that was like, I was looking at it through a telescope and I could see the flares of fire just jumping off of it and the intensity of it. And in my thoughts, I'm thinking that warm air that's lifting me is coming from there. I don't know if it was night or day, so it's a rising sun or a setting sun. But I know that I had lost all sense of time. And I'm describing this journey in what's taken a few minutes, but my existence there was a day and a half in my mind because there is no clock in that space. Anyway, I look down to the cove and I see this man standing knee deep in the water. And he's got 6 children in a chain holding hands on his right. And on his left hand, he has one child. And I thought, let me go down there and kind of check this out. So I went down there, and when I'm about 15 feet away from this being, he turns around. And sorry, when I saw him, it was my dad. And I looked at him, and the first thoughts that I have are, oh my God, my father. And I'm going to finally say to him what I could never do when I was a kid. But me and my father had a very clashy relationship. He used to drink a lot, and he was a bit abusive. Then I took on the responsibility of protecting my mother. And so we never had a relationship. We never hugged. We never said we loved each other. And in his mind, it was not the way of men. And so I see him there. And oh my gosh. And he looked at me and he said, me. And we communicate, not with words. I could just hear him in my head. So I finally get close to him and we embrace. And I'll tell you, I don't have any memory of embracing my father while I was alive. I have this memory of embracing him when I was dead. And when I held him, just like I became a tree, I became a bird, I became a flower, I became him. And I could feel what he had been what his life had been and how he actually felt about me, that he was actually proud of me and that he did love me. Anyway, separate. He looked at me, he said, you gotta go back. I looked at him, I said, no, I don't want to. And that's a stark contrast to when you're dying and you're trying to stay alive. And your body, by default, tries to stay alive, tries to do everything to stay alive. And here I am, dead now, aware that I'm dead, and saying, no, I don't want to go back. And he looked at me, he said, no, you have to go back. And I said, no, I don't want to. Anyway, I feel this pull right where my heart is, but it's coming from my back. And I feel this pressure, and all of a sudden I'm being sucked out. And I remember opening my eyes and looking at that doctor that was doing CPR, and she got kind of startled. And then I went back with my dad. And I'm standing there, and he said, look, you don't understand, you have to go back, it's not your time. And I'm still saying, no, I don't want to. So he looked at me and he finally said, look, let's make a deal. And the deal was very simple. When your time comes, I promise I will come and get you. And I'm thinking, well, that sounds like an incredibly good deal. So I said, okay. And the instant I said, okay, feel that pulling again, I tug, pull out, and I'm back in my body. And I'm looking at that doctor. I'll never forget her face. She was so stressed. And almost that look of relief. Anyway, they stabilized me. They prepped me, and they were getting ready to bring me into an ICU room. And I am wondering, was that real? Did that really happen? Did I actually see my father? And I started thinking, no, that can't be real. That's crazy. And I started to get incredibly stressed and very anxious. What happened was my heart rate started to accelerate again, and the monitors are registered for an alarm to go off when your heart rate reaches 140, something like that, 146. And so the alarm went off. And I'm really struggling with the thought of, if I was actually in heaven, could I have been such a bad person that they actually kicked me out? And the other side of me is, no, that couldn't be real. My dad died 5 years ago. It can't be possible. Struggling with that sense of, I just lost something incredible, and at the same time wondering if it was real. The alarm goes off, and this lady comes to the door. And I looked at her, and she was an older woman with these beautiful soft curls of silver gray hair. And she looked at me, and she said, do you want to take communion? And I looked at her, and in my mind, I thought, man, I haven't been to a church in over 30 years. I've got a tube in my mouth, intubated. And for some reason, I was nodding yes. She comes into this room, and she takes her palm, and she rubs it like this. Puts her hand like that, 2 fingers, and she touches my forehead. The minute she touched my forehead, I felt like I was dead again. And this sense of peace and calm just swam right over me, took me over. And I could hear her saying something. And she left a card on the desk, and she left. Anyway, my prognosis was that I was never going to leave that hospital alive, that I was going to not make it, and to take care of my affairs. So turns out I was in the hospital for 3 months. Every time a cold blue got hit, my fear would surge, I would panic. And the only place that I could go where I had any refuge was that inside that bowl where I saw all these colors. And I went there every time a cold blue got hit. And that experience of being in the hospital was quite sobering because it was mostly glass walls, and I could see in the other room. And often someone would come into that room next door to me, and 3 hours later they would lose their fight and they would be gone. And I kept thinking, one of those cold blues is going to be me again. Anyway, I kept running away and escaping into that space of colors. And somehow I started to improve. When I finally could speak, I asked my cardiologist, I just said to him, you know what, I think I went somewhere. And he said to me, no, your brain is still alive for 2 minutes after your heart stops. And there's no, you didn't go anywhere. It's all these drugs we were administering, and, release DMT, all these things. And I was like, wow, so then maybe I am crazy. A couple of months after that, I finally leave the hospital. I'm getting better. I had about 40% lung function, and they told me that I would never improve. So they gave me a year to live. But if I had surgery and I removed about half of each lung that was technically dead, according to them, that I might be able to live for 3 years. I had been in the hospital for so long and I was destroyed. I had lost about 30 pounds. And I said, you know what? I don't want to do this surgery. And I only had a 50-50 chance of surviving it anyway. So I chose to leave and take my chances. And if it was a year, then so be it. Anyway, I left the hospital and I started to think about who that person might have been that came in, because I wanted to go thank them for actually helping me get past that and helping me calm down and settle down after the experience. So about 6 months later, when I could actually get up and walk, I have this oxygen tank with me, and I went to every church organization, every synagogue, everywhere where they might send somebody to a hospital to help people, and things like that. Everywhere I went, that person did not exist. So I remember being at a Catholic church, and this was the last place that I could possibly go to in where I lived. And I explained what she looked like, and the guy said, no, there's nobody like that here. And I was insistent. No, she had to be. This is the last place. She had to be from here. So he said, come back tomorrow, and I'll have the lady that does that from our church come and meet you. Anyway, I went back the next day, and this woman comes. She's very thin, and she's maybe 50s, a lot younger than the person I'd seen. And she had red hair, and I'm looking at her. I said, no, this is not her. And the priest looked at me. He said, well, this is the person. And Jose, you do realize that at 2 o'clock in the morning, we're not going to have anybody in the hospital doing that. We can't. We're not allowed to. Anyway, I started thinking, well, maybe I'm a little loose in the head. Maybe I imagined her. Maybe I imagined that entire experience. So I started seeing psychologists, and I saw 5 psychologists within a 4-year span. And I'll just briefly get into that. The first psychologist that I saw, now understand that I couldn't speak about this experience. I couldn't tell her what happened. I couldn't say why I'm here. And I never spoke. I would go in there and just sit quiet. And I could see her taking notes, and I have no idea what she was writing, but about 6 months after coming there and seeing her, she she said to me, she said, Jose, I know what your problem is. And I said, okay. And she said, you hate your mother, you hate women. And she gave me this whole story. And I'm looking at her and I remember just saying, this is quite Freudian. And I called my insurance company. I said, look, I'm really having a hard time with this person. Is it possible to switch? So they put me with somebody else. And this was a woman that was really short. And I went in there, and I'll never forget this because you sit in a sofa and you kind of sink into it. And I'm kind of like looking up, and then she had 3 steps and this chair sitting up there, and it had a incredibly high back. And she sat up there almost like in a throne, and I would look at her and I'm thinking, gosh, what am I doing here? My first thought. And anyway, despite that, she was very good for me because when I left the hospital, I had become addicted to quite a few medications that they were giving me, to anti-anxiety medication, these medications to keep my heart rate down and things like that. And I was completely oblivious. I didn't know I was. Anyway, I'm very thankful for her because she got me off of all those things. She weaned me off. And I saw her for about a year, and then she comes to me one day and she says, when I went to see her, you know, Jose, your insurance only pays me like 30, 35 bucks. And I got a guy that's going to pay me cash, $75. So I'm not going to be able to see you anymore. And I want you to see, but I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'm going to put you with this other person that works here. And I met this incredibly amazing being that was younger. She had young children. And after a while, I'll never forget this. She sat on the sofa with me and she took my hand. Almost 3 years after my experience, and I was finally able to say, this is why I'm here. She listened to me and she was incredibly compassionate. And she was, in a way, somewhat caught up in it herself. And I just imagine that she never had someone that had this experience. Now I'm struggling with that experience because I think I'm the only one that's had that. I never heard of an NDE. I never heard of ions. I never heard of any of this. So I think I'm a completely isolated being. I'm in my own bubble, and I'm almost feeling completely detached from the world. I feel like I'm not even participating. And I'm having all these experiences, and I'm just holding that in, saying, oh my gosh, I'm just losing my mind. A lot of these things aren't real. You know, so I would always have the sensation that I was looking through this bubble and everybody was on the other side of this bubble, even if I was participating and having dinner or talking and whatever. I just felt so disconnected from everything. But anyway, once I was able to speak with her and tell her the story, we kind of, she helped me to get past that, and she kind of reintegrated me. One day, and this is a bit unusual even for her, she was taking a big risk. She had wanted to go see a psychic and take me with her to see what would happen. And I agreed. And then one day she says, tell me a little bit, you know, tell me something. And anyway, I told her something that I didn't know she had lost a child, but I told her, look, I had an experience that I saw this child and he had drowned in the lake, in a little lake. And there's so many lakes in Florida. So I described it. And she starts crying, and she cried for about 20 minutes. And I was feeling so terrible. I said, oh gosh, what did I say that was so bad? Anyway, I come back the next week when we're supposed to go see the psychic, and she looked at me and she said, look, Jose, I can't see you anymore. And I said, why? And she said, my 2-year-old drowned in a lake. And I cannot be with a client that knows more about me than I know about them. but I'm going to put you with someone else. Anyway, she puts me with this other psychologist, and this psychologist is really open and very aware and very familiar with NDEs and stuff like that. And I see her for about 2 years, and she starts talking to me about, I have two choices. One, if I stay in this metaphysical, in the spiritual world all the time, I'll eventually wind up being medicated, and I'll lose that. And if I stay into this physical world, I'll lose the spiritual side of what just has been reborn in me. So she said, you have to learn how to have one foot here and one foot there and create a balance. And whilst I'm seeing her, I meet Dr. Newcomb, who was one of the psychologists that worked with Dr. Bruce Grayson way back in the beginning of IANS. And she agreed to see me for a year, and she kind of finally taught me about what an NDE was and things like that. And she actually took me to my first IANS meeting in South Florida in the hospital. And so I became completely aware that I wasn't the only one, that I wasn't isolated. And I had made a decision at that point while I was seeing her. And the decision was, I embrace what happened as a truth, or I didn't. And then I would have to say that something was wrong with me. Anyway, I embraced it. And since I embraced it, my life has become incredibly peaceful and calm and filled with so much joy and happiness. You do change. So my wife that had taken me to the hospital became my ex-wife. She would always keep saying, where's the old Joe? I didn't marry you. I don't know who you are. And while I was thinking, now you have a better version, a more spiritual version, I think she was more conscious of when I was very competitive and aggressive and wanting to make money and have material stuff. And now all those things didn't matter to me, you know? And so that's kind of like what happened. And that's kind of a bit of my story. And like I say, a story never begins or ends. I am not my story. My story started way back when, in the beginning of time. And it's my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and all my siblings, my cousins and nephews and nieces, everybody that is integrated into my life is a part of me. And I realized that in my experience of death. My story started a long time ago, in the beginning. And I'm integrated into that story by virtue of my ancestral truth. And so I have an understanding that I'm just a part of something so vast and so beautiful. And so when I relate these things, I just feel like I'm opening up a book and I'm going into page 1850. Because all those other pages are part of my story. And all those other pages intertwine all of us at one point. And the differences all disappear. And we migrate into that space where I would say we become whole. I don't say we become one. When I died, I didn't become one, I became whole. And what that means is that I became part of everything. And I have that understanding that when I see that bird outside, that's me singing. That's me flying. When I feel the breeze, that breeze is me touching you. when I see the light, sun, sky, those beautiful sunsets and rising suns, I know that's me waking up and going to sleep. So the experience changed me in that way. I lost the sense of one, the sense of I live in this body and I'm independent of everything else. And I have a very profound sense of being, even that ant, that so we walk and step on without even being aware. And so that has been the most dramatic change in my life. And of course, like the story, I don't believe in journeys either. I'm in a constant state of one, of this moment, this presence. That's where I always am. I'm not in the past, I'm not in the future, I am always in this one space. And when I think about the past, I'm just moving into myself. When I think about the future, I'm also moving within. From one perspective, I'm looking at used potentials and what I did with those potentials. And when I look in the future, I look at unlimited potential. So I guess what I'm saying is we all have unlimited potential. We're always in that moment where we're fusing, moving from one second to the next. And the way I view life is almost like viewing a strip of film. And in between each frame is a space. And that is moving at an incredible speed in nanoseconds. And each one of those gaps is what holds me connected to the Creator. And that's why when we move on, we never get lost. And so that's kind of like my experience of where I was and things like that. My experience had the ability to change me in many ways. So I look at it from that perspective, and I think that's kind of like, you know, when I start thinking about what is life, why am I here? Do I have a purpose? And I look at life very simply. I think we like to make things very complex, and if it's not complex, it's not right. And I look at life very simply. I I I don't need to know my purpose, because my very being is my purpose. Everything I do becomes my purpose. And so I've been able to acquire a tremendous sense of peace and calm when it comes to living. I don't worry about a lot of things because I know they're not really that relevant. I know when I'm going to move on and my Father comes for me, all I could take are my memories. So I think our purpose in life is to make good memories, if there is a purpose, because that's all we could take with us. And I have an understanding that I had only been dead for 5 minutes. So maybe someone that's dead for 20 minutes goes deeper into that. And, you know, they become what I imagine would be whole and become everything. Kind of have that consciousness. You don't lose consciousness. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and speak a little bit to the four truths. So when we talk about surrender, you know, I look at it now as a necessity to move on. I don't look at surrendering as somebody that's giving up on something. It's just somebody that understands that whatever they do is not going to change its outcome. So they have to move on. To move on, I have to let go. I have to surrender. Surrendering is actually a choice. So when I was dying, in my head, from my personal experience, is only my experience, I believe that if I did not say it was okay to die, I would have still struggled in my living body. I had to give myself permission to let go. So it's a choice, but you don't have a choice not to make it, right? So we have to understand the difference between I want a fish or I want steak, or when I'm dying, that I can't change the outcome. And you have to accept that. And then, of course, you have to trust. I trust that if I inhale, I'm going to take in oxygen. I don't even think about it. So we have to trust that the universe loves me and it moves through me. And then I think this is really hard for us as human beings, but we have to trust, utterly trust, in allowing ourselves to be taken. It's a hard concept for a lot of people. It's even hard for us sometimes to love and give our love because we're afraid of being hurt. But we all come to that moment when we have to kind of trust that I'm going to be safe, I'm going to be loved, wherever I'm going, it's going to be okay. And then the act of acceptance is really when we end our resistance and our denial. It's the point where every option has been exhausted and we have to make peace with ourselves. It's taking ownership of all our deeds, good or bad. And for many of us throughout life, because we've had difficulties accepting traumatic or difficult events, we tend to get stuck in that time and we can't move. So if something happens to me when I'm 7, a part of me will always be 7 if it's very traumatic. With the act of acceptance, we can now move on and find our freedom. And it's a lot of people are fearful of dying and things like that, but we are so resilient that when that moment comes, we will be able to navigate through there in a good way, even if it's a traumatic death. And now the truth about letting go. So letting go is like a fork in the road. It means I have been moving in one direction my entire life, what I've been living. And now I need to take the path that presents itself before me. So the path is unknown. But that is the world that's opened up before me. And on that path, I can meet and embrace my future, whatever future means. Letting go is realizing that the original path has ended and you need to move forward in another direction. Letting go is a choice also. We all have lived through some very difficult times, some hard moments in life. We often tend to remember those moments most. And that's a choice that we make. But me, the new me, I choose to remember moments like this moment where I take a breath and I fill my lungs with life. Where I can look to my right and see through my window the beautiful blue sky and the soft breeze dance with the branches of trees before the daylight surrenders to the night to fill the sky with stars. These moments are eternally moving around me, always in full display, and the deep knowing that somewhere, somehow, I am loved. Because I know these are the moments that will live with me forever. These other times when I don't feel good or the moment causes me pain, these will get lost. But this moment, this I can take with me on my journey through eternity. So I ask you, what will you choose to remember? Let's become more aware of these little things in life, these little details that happen every day that are so special. Taking a deep breath is so special, just any breath. And then the truth about letting go is also, and this was very profound to me because it didn't mean that I was giving up. It didn't mean that I was forgetting. It doesn't mean that I'm weak. It wasn't a weakness. There's no shame in letting go. Letting go ultimately becomes a transformation. Letting go is the removal of limitations and a realization that I am not my body. I am not this. I am beautiful. No matter what anybody thinks or says. We all are. In union with your true self, simply, when I was falling through those holes and I was feeling all this pain and like I was being torn apart, I realized that I was just losing all those bad memories that were being stripped away, all those experiences that were negative. And it stripped all those layers of experience and identity that we cling to define ourselves. So what I'm saying is the title of father, mother, engineer, artist, healer, teacher, friend, son, daughter, etc. As we move through that experience, all those attachments dissolve and are peeled, falling away from us. We're then left exposed but pure. And we're so fearful of being exposed whilst we're in this body. In our purity, we are reliant on one thing and one thing only, and that's trust. Trust is the unknown and in the forces of creation of God. So that's what exists in creation and God to me, love and trust. And when all these things are removed from us, when we don't start thinking about what am I, then we become whole and we become more connected with the world that we live in. And we begin to appreciate the simplicity that life is. And I think that's what life is meant to be. Yes, it's okay to have all this technology and do all these amazing things, but it's also, we can't lose sight of our connectivity to everything else that exists here and all around us. And I think when we become that whole, we begin to feel more connected to Mother Earth, to all these things around us, to each other. So living in union with our true selves demands that we continue to remind ourselves of who we really are. Union means that we repeatedly choose not to strive to compare and contrast ourselves with others. Union means that we choose not to define ourselves by our titles, achievements, and or our material belongings. Union means that we simply exist and shine in the pure light of the essence of our true selves, and we acknowledge the same in others. So, to me, those are the most important lessons that I got from my death. An awareness that no matter how alone I feel sometimes, a realization that I know I'm never alone. There's always something with me. But anyway, I think now we're going to go ahead and start a meditation. I'd like everybody to close their eyes, take a nice deep breath, let it go.
Meditation for the day is going to be Vision Quest. Vision Quest speaks to the journey of our life. All the ups and downs that we go through, all these wonderful graces that we're able to embrace, and all these fearful events that take place in them, and how we move and push forward through them. So with that said, I would like everybody to take a nice deep breath. Hold it, hold it, let it go. Again, deep breath. Hold it, let it go. I want everybody to close their eyes. Think about the word breath. Think about freedom. And let your journey begin. Keep taking some nice deep breaths. And allow yourself to relax. Open your eyes, look at the colors, look at the rich blue, look at the little orange in there. Find the spot on this image that you resonate with. Keep your focus there. Nice deep breath, focus on that color, take a nice deep breath. Let it go. Nice deep breath. Let it go. Remember, this is about breathing. It's about allowing yourself to be free. And once we become free, we have an opportunity to see. And so what we want is during this meditation to get a vision of what our journey is and what it should be. Deep breath. Let it go. Focus on that color. They're moving. Watch the colors move. Close your eyes. Keep your eyes closed. Try to visualize that color that we were just talking about, the rich blues. Focus on those blues. What is blue? The sky, the ocean. It's all around us all the time. The lake sometimes. Focus on that blue. It's a color of life. And allow yourself to become free in that space. Deep breath. Let it go. Nice deep breath. Let it go. Open your eyes. I want you to look at the image. I want you to focus in the middle, in the black space. I want you to look at the kind of lotus flower. It might look like a bat, whatever it looks like to you. Focus on that spot. And imagine that you're drifting in. You're drifting in and it's just pulling you right inside. It's calling you. And the closer you get, the easier it is to breathe. Allow yourself to be pulled in. Now close your eyes. Imagine you're being pulled in. You're being pulled in. Being called home. It's like going home. Allow yourself. Deep breath. Hold it. Let it go. Take a deep breath. I want you to hold it as long as you can. Hold it. Hold it. Hold it. And when you can't hold it anymore, let it go. feel the freedom that it brings to you as you move in your journey into that black space. Allow yourself to be pulled in and ask yourself, what do I need and what do I want? Ask yourself and visualize it. Make that vision yours. Deep breath. Let it go. Now open your eyes. Focus on that image. Let your eyes move wherever they want to, wherever they need to go. Whatever color makes you feel good, makes you feel warm, that's where you should be. And understand that despite all that is going on today in the world, the difficulty that we have in breathing, in feeling free, here's a moment when we could surrender to that freedom. And we do that by taking in a nice deep breath. Deep breath. Close your eyes. Focus on that color. Focus on that color. Focus on what you want and what you need. Visualize it and hold on to that vision. Slowly take deep breaths. I want you to open your eyes. I want you to breathe normally and just look at the colors, look at the image, look at them move, and feel them. Let your eye go to where it wants to. Allow yourself to be free. Allow yourself to breathe. Give yourself permission to let go and be free. Allow yourself to surrender to your inner self. Keep looking at the colors, watch them move, take slow breaths. Close your eyes, allow yourself to continue to feel this sense of freedom, sense of peace and calm, and continue to visualize what it is that you need in your life, what you need today. Visualize it as if it was here and you had it. Breathe. Open your eyes. Continue to look at the colors. Focus on wherever you want to go. And ask yourself, do I deserve what I want and what I need? Take your deep breaths. Breathe. Breathe. Allow yourself to be free. Understand that you're deserving. Free yourself and breathe. Focus on the art. Allow yourself to understand the difference between what I want and what I need. And ask yourself if you already have what you need. And understand how your life can be filled and is full. Manifest what you want. Breathe. Take 3 quick breaths and a nice deep slow breath. How beautiful it feels to breathe. How beautiful a breath of air is. How calming, how relaxing, how it enriches us, how it makes us feel whole. Again, deep breath. Let it go. Relax and be free.
Okay, so I hope that meditation went well. And the crazy thing is I can't see it here, so anyway, the next thing we're going to do is just take another nice deep breath. Let it go. And we're going to talk about, or kind of start a healing session. And a healing session for my mind is all of us that are here participating. Goal is to send good intentions to everybody else that's here and not focus on what your needs are. So that means that there are 18 of us here, 17 people are sending good intention your ways, and you're sending good intention to everybody else. And that way we heal. And that's how we heal as beings. So Michael, if you could start that music. With our eyes closed, I want you to think about what it might be to feel, or what you might feel to be in somebody else's shoes. So, in my experience, when I became my dad, I learned what it was actually like to become, or be, and walk in somebody else's shoes. Not what we think, not what we think about them, not how we judge, because we judge immediately when we see somebody, but rather what it really is like to be that person. And what does that person mean? And if I am able to share and send good thoughts in that person's direction and become that angel that came to my room that night, then that's what we're trying to do now. So keep taking deep breaths, keep thinking about everybody else, keep thinking about what their needs are. And I want them to heal. I want whatever they need to become theirs. I want them to manifest what they need and want in this life. Taking these nice, deep breaths. Focus on everybody else that's there. If you like, you can put your hands up. Send that energy their way. With an awareness that a lot more energy than I could send that way is coming back at me. Take that energy in, embrace it. Feel grateful for it. Give. At the end of the day, we are here to serve. We are here to give what we have within us to others. And I know when I give, a lot comes back. I believe in two types of angels. I believe in the spiritual beings, and I believe that each and every one of us is an angel. And we have that capacity to heal others. Sometimes we bump into somebody, we say something to somebody, do something, and we change that life trajectory. So we are that angel. We all do this all the time. When we think of healing, we're so accustomed to thinking of ourselves and our needs. That becomes our focus. When we think of healing, if we think of others, and if I imagine that there are millions of people out there thinking of healing, by sending their good thoughts out, then a million times more healing that takes place. And so we're doing that here. We're not healers, but by sending these intentions and these thoughts out, we heal. Grateful that you have the capacity to give. It's to take. You're to give. Give freely. Send good healing thoughts in everybody's way. Let's send healing thoughts to the world. All this unrest and all this insanity that's going on. Let's pray that we have good outcomes. Share the love. Share the essence of your being. Friendly. Love who you are. Love yourself. Grateful for who you are. We're all beautiful. We're all special. We're also the harshest judge of ourselves. Be kind to you. Take deep breaths. Take in Creator, God. Okay, so we'll open our eyes. I want to thank you all for participating. And session is done. So at this point, if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask, I'd be happy to answer. So Jim, you might want to navigate that if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I'm watching. I see an iPhone has a hand raised.
And let me jump in real quick and say that I cut off recording, so none of this is being recorded.
Okay.
Anybody like to pose a question? You might have to unmute yourself.
Jim,
Yes.
this is Ron.
Hi, Ron. How are you?
Ah, incredibly, awesomely wonderful. Thank you so much for bringing me there, because I've been there.
You're welcome.
And tears, joyful gratitude is what I feel. So tears constantly through this. And yes, love yourself. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Does everybody know how to raise your hand if you want to ask a question?
Thank you.
Jim, it's Bill. I can't find the little hand raise thing.
That's right. You're on the phone. You probably can't do it on your phone. Go ahead, Bill.
Wait, I'm on the phone. Yeah, I'll do it. No, it's not. It's this thing. Anyway, I had a question right now. If you had been in this meeting before you'd gone to the hospital and heard somebody else say what you said, would it be sort of hard to take it all in? Because I think that's where I am. I haven't had, and I think, wait a minute, I would like to do this, but this is sort of way advanced. I'm not quite sure what you're talking about, if that makes sense. And I guess that's where we all are. But that's the only thing I was thinking was, you just have a lot of work to do because it's like being a preschooler in a grad school class or something.
Yeah. Good break. Good way.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
I got it. That was just my reaction. So it just means you have a lot of work to do, but I appreciate you doing this because it's good to just kind of listen to this and let it soak in.
Yeah. Well, what I can say to that is, if before I had my experience, I would probably say that this is a lot of BS, mumbo jumbo. It's wishful thinking. I would never have believed it. Incredibly enough, sometimes I do think about that, like what I was before, what I am now, you know. But like you, I still feel like that little babe in the woods right now, exploring this new world and trying to appreciate and understand what it is that's all around me. You know, I'm used to a very complex world. You know, I was one of these guys that was very into my physical being, and I thought that I owned things, that I had possession of things, and suddenly I have this experience and I realize that none of this stuff belongs to me. Probably enough, not even my body, because I had left my body. I had to leave it behind. But, you know, it's just the course and journey of our life, you know. One day, you know, when you're ready, if that's what you're looking to do, you'll find yourself in that space, you know, and you'll be more understanding perhaps. And I'm not saying you're not understanding the world now, it's just a different perspective. I'm seeing it through a different lens that I saw it 20 years ago. And it's just my interpretation of what it is. It doesn't mean it's what it is. It's not the only word. I'm sure a lot of people, you know, see things through their own eyes and view it their own way. So I don't know if that helps you in any way, but I hope it did.
Janae, you want to speak? There you go.
Thank you. I have been blessed to meet Jose, and have never got to hear the whole story. But I resonated with him because there were a lot of similarities and a lot of big synchronicities. For anyone who is having trouble understanding, and if I overstep, please just tell me to stop. My mom was in hospice. I had 2 small children. I went back to school in the medical field. I listened to what my mom said about those hospice people and the experiences that they went through. And as I watched, I saw that these things do happen. People will sit up, they'll reach out, and the hearing is the last thing to go. They can always hear. And so I would remember sitting with someone and holding their hand because no one was around, and I would just hold their hand and silently pray with them. Jose, I am so grateful you made it, and you're here, and you're sharing your story. And if anybody doubts it, everything's a little different, but it is what you see and what you believe and what is in your heart. And I'm sending you all my love.
Thank you. Thank you. And also understand that, you know, whilst we believe someone might be in a semi-coma or induced coma or in a coma, the awareness
They hear.
that's owned by that being is amazing. And that touch is so important.
Yes.
I was a coward to not have the courage to grab a nurse's hand or somebody's hand that was there, because I was so caught up in this mindset of, you're a guy, you're supposed to be tough, and this is what we're taught. And to this day, I wonder, how could something that is taught to me overwhelm such a profound instinct to need that touch, to feel that warmth, to feel that connection to something else. And, you know, I think that's really what life is. You know, we see, we hear, we taste, we have all our senses are so always engaged. The least engaged is touch. And it's an important connection. It kind of says to me in my physical body that I'm not alone. It gives you a sense of care. It acknowledges your being. It acknowledges your presence. It validates that you're here. And it's also very kind and tender to do that when people are moving on. I think we really don't understand, you know, when I was dead for 5 minutes and right before I'm dead and I can't communicate or anything, the mindset of people would be that there's nothing going on in that head. That head is so aware. And I was, and I would imagine most people are. And I think it's a blessing to be able to share these stories in a way, you know, and you know, take from it whatever feels right to you, whatever you resonate with, and just kind of feel it out, you know, let it kind of process. You know, it took me years to embrace that it had happened to me. It took me years, and I was seeing therapists for a long time. And it's not easy. You know, it really challenged what I thought was my reality. It really challenged what I thought. I thought that everything was science-based, that everything is math-based, that everything can be answered. And what I learned was that not only everything can't be answered, but it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that I'm here, and what am I going to do with this life now? What do I want my legacy? How do I want people to remember me? That's all that matters. And I think it's why why all of us are so important. Because we can all do that. We all have that capability. You know, and we change lives and we do so many things without even being aware. You know, and being that I'm part First Nation, we have a term that we use and when we end things, and it means we say all my relations. And what we're speaking to is every being that crossed my path. Even if we just glanced at each other walking across the street, but you are intersected in my life forever. You are woven into my world. Whatever I do, I can never unravel you from that. And then it speaks further to the ancestral tree that moves beyond us. And we speak about our 7 grandmothers, which means going back into eternity. And so that's what we are. You know, we're that important, we're that relevant. And so I hope this is making sense to all of you, because it's kind of like, you know, we have a lot of practices that we could go out and do and experience that might bring us a little closer to that space that I'm talking about. So that might be something that you might be able or want to look into. There's so many modalities today that are mindful based, that are spiritual based, that, you know, that can kind of take you closer to that door so you have a better understanding.
I might add something to that, Jose. I have not had a near-death experience, but I've been studying the subject for quite a while. There's a researcher who talks about, I think his name is Ken Ring, Dr. Ken Ring, talks about a benevolent virus you catch when you listen to people talk about their experiences. You begin to have an appreciation for our spiritual nature, and you can start getting a better balance between the human side of things and the spiritual side of things. I remember having a conversation with my mother-in-law shortly before she passed. I asked her if she was afraid of death, and she remarked that she was. She'd been a devout Methodist all her life, but her religion had not provided her any kind of comfort that there was really something of value waiting. After she passed, I don't know how long it was, but I had a psychic reading. I don't do many of those, but I found one or two people that I trust. And my mother-in-law came through, and the affirmation I got from that was, your mother-in-law is telling you she now understands what you were trying to tell her. That you carry your consciousness over, and if you have fears and doubts, that'll get carried over. And it's important to realize that you can let go of those before you get to the other side. If you take the time to listen to people like Jose, to read about near-death experiences, you can prepare yourself for what comes next. Bill Lemfesty, I think, had another question. Bill, you have to unmute yourself. I think.
Okay, I'm doing it. It takes a minute. Okay.
You're still, can you unmute yourself once again?
Let me ask you one question, because I appreciate the comments you made about the importance of both hearing and touch. And I'm asking this, realizing that there's no right answer. Maybe like your reactions to, sometimes I wonder, when we're praying for somebody, if we're praying for the right thing. So what I end up asking is, for example, I would like for you to get better, unless for some reason it's not really in whatever plan it is. So it's kind of like saying, God, help this person get better, but thy will be done. So if that's not what's needed, don't do it. But having said that, is there a danger that if the person does not need to come back, and you're trying to talk to the person or to the person, and you're interrupting the process the person's going through, that you're actually impeding the process he needs to go through, if that makes sense? Or is it just good to say, assume that, if you do things in the right spirit, it's better to go ahead and try to communicate with, say, sound stuff and touch stuff than not, because it's likely you're going to do more good than harm. Does that make sense?
If I understand your question, I think what you're asking is, if someone is getting ready to cross, is it okay to speak and to ask for healing? And my question would be, with the intention and to what capacity we're asking to heal. So healing at one point will not be possible. At that point, we're going to get ready to move on. It's great to hear voices. It's great to hear people, express their love, and so I don't think that when you speak to someone that's ready to move on, you'd have to worry about prayers and things like that. I think it's all done in a good way, but understand that there is an awareness that's happening within that person. So when you touch and you speak, I don't believe it could make them hold on. I think they can make themselves hold on if they're fearful, if they're worried about their family, if they're worried about their kids, if they're worried about things like that. They're going to try to hold on. They have to come to terms with themselves and say it's okay. They're going to be okay. They're going to be all right. They're going to make it. I did the best I could put with my children. I did whatever. And they have to allow themselves to move on. That's not something that you're going to impact, with your prayers and prayers for healing. And to me, healing is so many levels. We talk about healing physically, but, I think when I ask someone to heal when they're ready to move on, what I'm asking them to do is prepare to move on, to embrace it, to accept it. And that is a tremendous and a great type of healing that needs to happen. It had to happen to me. You know, I had to finally come to terms with what was happening, you know, and understand that aspect of it. So I think when you speak to someone when they're moving on, I think that's a great thing. I don't think you can do wrong. So, you know, even if you ask them to stay with you, I don't think you could do wrong, because I think they have to wrestle with their own thoughts. You know, I prefer, though, to give them permission to believe that it's okay. We're going to be fine. We're going to make it. You know, we love you. We know you love me. And I'm going to be okay. I can manage. You taught me well or whatever. You know, you'll always be with me. And just give them permission to move on.
Ron, you've got your hand raised. Do you want to unmute again?
Jose, you're not alone. I have been in tears of recognition ever since you started. I've been in the garden, and yes, everything you say is so perfect as far as I was feeling the leaves. I was looking out my window and just being them fluttering. So you're doing so well, Jose, just explaining it. And like I had mentioned, you brought tears, joyful tears of gratitude to my eyes throughout your presentation. And I was touching and in the light.
Jose, Ron is a near-death experiencer also.
Well, I'm honored to be in your presence, everybody's presence.
Yes. And Jim, I had met Ken Ring when him and I shared my experience back in 1986, when it just started as far as recognition of the experience before ions.
I know we have at least one other near-death experiencer here. Barbara, do you have any comments? Not sure she's...
Yeah, she did send a question by text. She asked about the art. So when I came back from my near-death experience, I had never painted before. And I started painting, trying to reproduce what I saw. And I figured out that if I attach a light to it, it begins to move, and it kind of feels like what I was trying to do or capture when I was dead. The art right now is being incredibly well received. I'm working with multiple hospitals to bring it in. One of the guests that we had on was from Johns Hopkins Hospital, the Children's Hospital in Florida. We're going to be doing a program there to use the art to help people to relax and to feel better. Janae has a piece of art right there on the window. I know that Joanne has several pieces. And the idea of the art is really to help us find ourselves, heal, to bring our stress levels down, to relax. And I kind of look at them and say, look, let's create a little sanctuary space at home or whatever. But program is got legs already. We're working with the Parks Department here in the city of Cologne in British Columbia. And we're doing 13 beacons of hope that will have a piece of art, and these beacons are going to be lit up at night, and they're going to be shooting up into the sky with the idea of bringing peace and community to the world. And hopefully this is a Rotary project. You know, it becomes a global footprint that they use this design and move it forward. But, you know, to me, art is not something on the wall. It's a living being. And it has life. Everything around me has life in my mind. And art speaks to us. And that's why I like this piece and I don't like that piece. And somebody else liked the piece I didn't like, and they don't like the piece I like. But it speaks to us and it resonates with us. And I think it has to do with the frequency of color. You know, and I think it has tremendous healing capacity. In my mind, it healed me. my prognosis was you're not going to leave, you'll never get out of this place alive. That those colors, that stuff, that memory, I believe had a tremendous impact in my ability to stay here. And I use the art constantly to help me relax, to help me calm. It brings peace to me. And my experience with it, and with many other people, I've worked with over 1,000 people one-on-one, and the impact that it has on people is mind-boggling sometimes. It's beyond the scope of even what I thought could be possible. So because I look at it as something that has life, then it has the capacity to touch me. And if it touches me, then it has the capacity to do all kinds of things. And, you know, one of the things that when I was in hospital that I felt was under assault all the time was my hope. And every day I was becoming more and more hopeless. And every time I thought about the art and remembered it, it kind of replenished me. And I think if I would have lost that, I would have become totally hopeless. I would have kind of given in and checked out. But, you know, I feel that, you know, light is very important to us. And it touches us in many ways. We need it. But I also feel that we also need the evening and the night and the dark. So I feel that each is equally important. So when I paint, I start painting on a black canvas. And to me, the black canvas represents creation. And I think of it kind of like when I look out at night and I see all the darkness and I see the stars. It's the palette that all those stars are painted on. Without that darkness, there would be no stars. You know, and you know, I love being in the quiet, in the dark. I love the evening. I love the night. But I'll share another experience with you very briefly. In a sweat, where it's pitch black and you can't see your hand in front of you, I learned what it means to be one in this world in many ways, because I know there are 20 people in there with me, but I can't see them. We all become one there. We become one palette. We're all just black. Yet, in that blackness is all this consciousness. There are 20 of us in there. And I think of that as that space where creation is. It's just this space with all this consciousness. And here we are able to experience that consciousness in a body. But that consciousness is just out everywhere. Wherever we look, wherever we are is consciousness, whatever we see. And it needs that space to kind of exist in our reality. And so to me, creation is space. The palette that allows for life started with light. But anyway, that's kind of like what I feel about the art, and I hope that answers some of your questions, Barbara. And maybe some people that have the art might be able to share some of their experiences with it.
Thank you, Jose. It's Barbara, and I just want to say hello to everybody. And what a beautiful morning this has been listening to you. I have a injury on my knee, so I'm still in bed laying here trying to have it heal, and I felt the healing come through from all of you when we were quiet for those moments. And so thank you so much. I really appreciate your beautiful talk again and again. I love hearing you.
Thank you, Barbara. Barbara's a very special being. I all want you to know. She has an amazing group in Santa Barbara, California. I've had the incredible opportunity to speak to. I'm so grateful for that. She has one of the kindest hearts that I know.
Which reminds me, at some point I was supposed to make an announcement about this French TV producers program. Jose has met Sophie. Sophie lives in Paris and is in charge of a TV production company. They are studying remote healing, and they have a remote healer that they are setting up appointments with, and attempting to see if this remote healer can heal whatever ailments people have. So she contacted me and asked if we might have some people who would volunteer for healing. And if you have an interest in that, you can send me an email, and I'll pass the names along. The next healing session won't be until the end of October. But it sounds like an interesting undertaking. So if you'd like to be a part of that, let me know.
Jim, you might want to put your email up or somewhere where they can reach you.
You think that might be appropriate?
It might help.
I'll send a little chat
Maybe
there.
jot it down.
There, just a little chat to everybody. If you can't see the chat because you're on I don't know, do the cell phones pick up that chat?
Oh,
I think it's saying yes.
yes. So I want to thank you all for being here. I don't know if anybody has any more questions.
Hey, Joe, I had one question. I don't do art, but I play music, and I had a question. There are times when I start playing stuff, and if there's anybody in the room, I start thinking I would like to do whatever this person enjoys, and it's kind of like I would like to. If I'm playing, I'd like to find common ground with this person and kind of go beyond all the little things that we let divide us, like politics and sometimes religion and all the other stuff, especially today. Things are so contentious. And it's like, I would just like to do something that's like an unbroken connection that's positive for me to whoever else is in there. Do you have that kind of feeling when you paint and you think, I'd like for this to be, whoever sees this, I'd like for just this to be saying, things are positive and we're connected, and it's just kind of, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And when I paint, my thought is that when you look in the painting, you are really seeing yourself. And you're not only seeing yourself, you're seeing your entire lineage, your ancestral tree. And it goes all the way back to that first layer that I start with, that's black, and it brings you back into creation. I think when you make music, and that's my thoughts, the sound is given life. So you are at that point a creator. So and we all do this. So when I see somebody write a word, when you write that word down, you give it life. You bring it into this physical world. When I write a number down, I give that number life. So, when we hear music and we feel good and things like that, you're tapping into sources within me. You're tapping into memories. You're tapping into maybe memories that I'm not even aware of, ancestral memories. So when you do music and you do things like that, you're actually taking on the role of creation. And so when we write words, what I like to think is, let's write words that are positive, because I want to give that life. If I write things that are of fear, then I'm energizing that fear. And from my perspective, fear doesn't exist. It's only in my mind. It's only in this realm. Fear on the other side doesn't exist. There's only love. So I believe that we are predisposed to be love. We are engineered for that. We are made from that. We come from that. And over here, because we're made to worry about so many things. If I don't work, I can't pay my bills. If I can't pay my bills, I can't eat. Where am I going to live if I can't pay the rent? And we create so much fear, you know, and we learn to use fear against each other. So we instill fear in others. But, you know, I think when you do your music, you're speaking from your heart. And, you know, people, you know, we think of the heart as something that keeps me alive, that beats. When we think of love, we draw it as a heart. But you have to understand that whenever I felt a great emotion, I don't feel it in my brain. I feel it in my heart. So what I'm saying is my heart is more connected to my spirituality than my mind is. My mind helps me to navigate this world. My heart navigates my spiritual senses, the more that I am, and has that awareness. So when you play music, you tap into memories that are much richer than what are in my head. Tap into my essence, my core. And it's a frequency that makes that happen. But you're generating that frequency. What do you play? What instrument?
I think Bill said he played the guitar.
It's a keyboard. I used to do accordion, and now it's keyboard stuff. And the interesting thing is that it lets, with all the electronic stuff, you can mimic several instruments. So it's like a church organ or harpsichord stuff. You can do a lot of neat stuff. But the thing is, and I really never noticed this till like 3 or 4 years ago, that I just think it would be nice to, when I'm doing this, I'm sort of opening up a connection with whoever's paying attention. And if that's what your painting's doing, then that's pretty neat stuff, because it's, you know, it's better than all the other stuff we're doing. This keeps us divided and stuff.
Exactly. And you know, if you realize we're talking about frequency, art, music, it's all frequency based. Everything is frequency based. And when we distill everything down to the core, we're even a frequency. I might resonate with one person and not with another, but it's all frequency based. It's what comes off of me. What am I sending out there?
Joanne, if you got a comment?
Yeah, I do. It has been my experience that the art, without question, heals, but it also connects with our heart. So since I've been so fortunate to experience the art, I feel that I operate more now from my heart than my head. My whole life is slowed down because I'm coming more from my heart. I was always that way, but it was the art that spoke directly to my heart. And it for sure heals. I mean, I've had that experience as well, but it does connect directly to us. Really extraordinary, because indigenous people say that that's our more intelligent organ, and if it's the first organ that develops in the fetus, I think some people question where the soul is, and some people say that when the heart develops in the fetus, that's when the soul goes into the human. But this is what's so brilliant about Jose's art, is it definitely connects with our heart, and it's pretty amazing. And I also wanted to say that I've always gone to nature, but I experience more through Jose's art than even being in nature. which is really wild. So, and when it moves, then there's magic. Magic absolutely happens when it moves. So I feel really blessed. Yeah, really blessed to be exposed to the art. Mm-hmm.
Well, we didn't spend enough time on the art.
Yeah.
Jose, do you have a website that we could communicate to people if they want
Yeah,
to explore that further?
I'll put it up on the chat. So I have an art site, and I also have one where we're working with the hospital. So it's Jose Fine Art, Jose Hernandez Fine Art. See if I can get it here. Art.
There we go.
Right.
Be sure to check out that website. It's a magical thing, and we didn't talk about it enough, I think. But I thank everybody for being here. We'll bring this to a close. Some of us will hang around a little bit to talk about some technical things, but thank you for all the participants that are here and what you've contributed to the value of this gathering.
Thank you all. Many blessings. Stay safe. Think good thoughts.
All right.